In many families today, the difference in treatment between children leaves scars that last a lifetime. That night, in a room illuminated with balloons and streamers, music and laughter celebrated the eldest son. In the center, a huge cake and piles of gifts made the party shine. But in a dark corner, a girl in a simple dress watched in silence, her eyes full of longing. Nobody seemed to notice her sadness until an unexpected gesture changed the course of that night and the heart of the entire family. What city are you watching this video from, and what time is it? By the way, if you're enjoying my videos, I'd be so happy if you could subscribe to my channel and like this video. And before continuing, let me wish you health and peace. Tell me, from which country and at what time are you watching this story? In the room illuminated with balloons and streamers, everyone applauds while the giant cake appears. But in a corner, a girl observes in silence, her eyes full of longing, the echo of music mixed with guests' voices. On the table, Alvaro's cake shone with its lit candles, and all the children surrounded it with shouts of emotion. Lucia, standing behind the curtain, pressed against her chest a notebook where she had drawn with crooked crayons a cake with a single candle. Nobody noticed her gesture, that drawing which for her was worth as much as the enormous cake occupying the main table. The house in Boston was full of laughter. It was spring, and fresh air entered through open windows. In nearby streets, preparations for the spring festival could be noticed in balconies decorated with flowers. However, inside the room the celebration was different. Adults toasted with wine, children ran with streamers, and Mariana, the mother, attended to each guest with a proud smile. Alvaro, the eldest son, was at the center of everything. At 12 years just turned, he enjoyed attention like a crowned prince. His friends surrounded him, handed him packages wrapped in colored papers, and he opened each gift with triumphant laughter. In contrast, Lucia, his 8-year-old sister, remained invisible. She wasn't the protagonist and knew it well. In her simple dress, she barely dared take a step toward the table, as if the space were reserved for another world to which she didn't belong. At one moment, Mariana passed by her with a tray of drinks, without noticing her dimmed gaze. Julian, the father, conversed with a neighbor about work, indifferent to the corner where Lucia hid her longings. Among the adults appeared Don Ernesto, the 40-year-old neighbor, who entered with calm steps. He greeted courteously, accepted a glass of wine, and remained a few instants observing. His gaze, more attentive than others, stopped on the girl behind the curtain. He saw how her eyes followed the candles with a mixture of sadness and hope. The music rose a bit more in volume when everyone gathered around Alvaro. The cake was placed before him, decorated with whipped cream and fresh strawberries. The room lights dimmed and someone began to sing, "Happy Birthday." Lucia, from her corner, moved her lips in silence, as if she also wanted to participate, though nobody gave her the word. Others' voices drowned out hers. Alvaro, smiling, blew hard on the candles, and a deafening applause filled the room. Everyone celebrated. Someone shouted, "Bravo!" and streamers flew through the air again. Lucia, on the other hand, shrank a bit more against the wall. With her fingers she squeezed the notebook tightly, and in a murmur nobody heard, whispered, "I wish I could too." After cutting the cake, children ran through the room, staining their lips with cream. Adults continued cheerful chat, ignoring the silence in the corner. Don Ernesto, while toasting with a guest, looked at the girl again. He noticed she discreetly disappeared toward the hallway. He said nothing but kept that image. Lucia locked herself in her room, turned on the small nightstand lamp, and opened the notebook. Carefully, she colored the cake drawing, added a lit candle, and wrote beside it, "My birthday." In that moment, she seemed to find in those crooked lines a way to calm her heart. In the distance, the party noise continued as if nothing. Inside the room, only the scraping of pencil on paper was heard. Lucia rested the drawing against the pillow and looked at it fixedly. Something in her eyes, despite the sadness, announced that desire would not be forgotten. 2 weeks later, the house was much quieter. The dining room table showed barely a plate of potato omelet, some hard bread, and a pitcher of fresh water. Outside, spring unfolded with strength. Boston's balconies were full of flowers, and from the window could be heard laughter from children playing in the street preparing for the neighborhood fair. Inside, however, nobody seemed to remember that night was special for Lucia. The notebook with the cake drawing still rested under her pillow. She had checked it upon waking, as if wanting to remind herself the day had finally arrived. She held hope perhaps her parents would prepare some small surprise, even if just a lit candle. However, upon seeing the table set with usual food, her heart sank little by little. Mariana conversed with Julian about bills and work, without mentioning the date at any moment. He listened distracted, drinking a glass of wine. Alvaro, with phone in hand, laughed watching some video, oblivious to everything. Lucia sat before them in her simple dress, waiting in silence. For a few minutes she maintained hope of hearing "Happy birthday, daughter." But the silence became unbearable. Dinner passed like any other. Mariana talked about how busy she was with fair preparation. Julian commented on office problems, and Alvaro insisted he wanted to go downtown with his friends on the weekend. Lucia chewed slowly, looking at the candle dimly illuminating the table. Her eyes stopped on that flame as if it were the only one she had left. When they finished dinner, Mariana got up to collect plates. Julian turned on the living room television, and Alvaro locked himself in his room. Nobody said anything to the girl who remained seated before the bread. Lucia waited a few more seconds until she understood there would be no surprise, no cake, not even a simple hug. Then she got up in silence, walked to the kitchen, and looked for a small plate. She took a piece of hard bread, placed it carefully, and looking toward the dining room table saw the candelabra. She stretched to take a small candle left on the side and stuck it in the bread. With trembling hands she lit the flame. The glow illuminated her face as she observed it, as if that flame returned a bit of dignity. She closed her eyes and breathed deeply. She murmured a wish she didn't say aloud, and then blew out the candle with a mixture of shyness and sadness. The small column of smoke rose, filling the kitchen with a smell of extinguished wax. At that instant, a tear escaped. It wasn't noisy crying, but a silent drop that slid down her cheek until falling on the bread. Lucia hurried to wipe it with her sleeve, fearing someone would enter and discover her. She hugged herself, as if wanting to give herself a gift nobody else seemed to remember. Suddenly, a creaking of steps broke the silence. The girl's heart jumped, believing they would scold her for lighting a candle without permission. She slowly turned her head, and in the doorway appeared Don Ernesto's figure. He stood still with eyes shining under the kitchen's dim light. Lucia opened her mouth to excuse herself, but couldn't say anything. The candle's smoke still floated in the air, and in the man's eyes reflected a mixture of surprise and tenderness. He said nothing immediately, simply looked at her as if in that instant he remembered something about himself. The girl, motionless, felt that secret she had kept in silence had just been discovered. Candles alone don't taste the same, do they? Don Ernesto's voice broke the kitchen's silence softly, like a caress in the midst of shadows. Lucia shuddered, feeling she had been discovered in a secret too intimate. Her small hands pressed on the bread plate while observing the just extinguished candle, still smoking, as if that smoke could betray her wishes. The memory of Alvaro's party came over her with full force, the colored balloons bursting from time to time, the smell of fresh cream from the enormous cake, friends shouting and applauding, her mother's proud voice presenting the birthday boy. She, on the other hand, had remained in an invisible corner drawing crayon cakes in her notebook. And now, before the neighbor, she feared he would mock that small ritual she had improvised with a piece of bread and a borrowed candle. Don Ernesto took a step into the kitchen. His shadow projected on the peeling wall, and spring air entered through the open window, air loaded with the aroma of donuts from the fair, young wine spilled in square bars, guitars playing festive songs. In contrast, the kitchen was bathed in dim yellow light with silence broken only by the girl's hurried heartbeat. "Tell me, Lucia," he asked, leaning down a bit with grave but warm voice. "What did you wish when you blew out that candle?" The girl hesitated. Her lips trembled as if words were too heavy to come out. Finally, in an almost imperceptible murmur, she responded, "I just wanted a real candle on my birthday." Upon saying it, her eyes filled with tears she fought to contain. She didn't cry noisily, but that confession, so small and so large at the same time, made every corner of the kitchen tremble. Ernesto looked at her in silence, and in that instant something inside him broke. He remembered his own childhood, a damp patio in a nearby town, his older siblings laughing around a cake bought at the bakery, and he, the youngest, forgotten because nobody had patience to light one more candle. He remembered how his mother had said, "You blew them out last year. It doesn't matter that much," and how that phrase had remained engraved like an invisible scar. He leaned toward Lucia, and with a tenderness that surprised even himself, caressed her hair. "It shouldn't be this way," he murmured, voice charged with emotion. "All children deserve their candle." "You too, daughter." The girl raised her gaze, surprised. Nobody had called her daughter with that warmth, at least not in a long time. It was different from her mother's distracted tone or the hurry with which her father sent her to bed. In those 3 syllables was recognition, as if for the first time someone truly saw her. Lucia smiled weakly, timid, but her eyes shone with a spark Ernesto would never forget. He gently squeezed her shoulder, trying to transmit the certainty he himself had lacked as a child. "This can't stay like this, Lucia. Tomorrow you'll have your candle as it should be." The girl was left speechless. Part of her wanted to believe, but another feared everything was a dream that would vanish at dawn. However, the way Ernesto said it, serious, with firm voice, with conviction admitting no doubts, made that promise settle in her heart like a seed. Outside, the fair continued with its bustle. Drums marking rhythm, guitars pulling applause in the town square, and a murmur of people laughing under lights hanging from balconies. Inside the kitchen, on the other hand, time seemed suspended. The candle's smoke drew spirals in the air as if keeping the girl's secret. Lucia breathed deeply, and without realizing let escape a small smile. It wasn't open laughter, but a fragile, timid gesture, sufficient to light her eyes. She clung to that promise like someone embracing an invisible gift. She didn't know that word spoken softly in a modest kitchen was about to alter not only her birthday, but also her entire family's dynamic. Lucia smiled timidly. It wasn't a full smile, but enough to illuminate her eyes. She clung to that promise like someone keeping a secret treasure. She didn't know that word pronounced in a humble kitchen under yellow light was about to change her whole family's dynamic. The next day, May's sun shone over Boston's rooftops and air smelled of fresh flowers hanging from balconies for the spring festival. Don Ernesto woke early with different determination in his eyes. He walked down the cobblestone street toward the neighborhood bakery, a small but cozy place where display cases showed cakes with cream, strawberry, and chocolate. He greeted the baker with cordial gesture. He ordered a simple cake, round, decorated with strawberries and cream, and asked them to put a single red candle on it. While waiting, he remembered Lucia and the expression in her eyes when she confessed her wish the night before. That image wouldn't leave him in peace. A girl blowing out a candle on a piece of hard bread, as if that were all she deserved. The baker, an older woman, smiled upon handing him the white box. "It's for someone special, right?" she asked with mischief. Ernesto lowered his gaze and responded with sincerity. "Yes, very special." He paid, left a generous tip, and left with the box carefully held in his hands. The morning's soft warmth gave him strength. Upon arriving at his street, he saw Lucia peeking from the balcony. The girl looked at him with a mixture of surprise and shyness, and when he lifted the box and winked at her, her eyes lit up as if she had just received a treasure. He climbed the stairs slowly with heart beating hard, aware he was about to do something more than give a cake. He was willing to light a flame in a home that had forgotten the importance of justice and affection. Afternoon advanced slowly. Mariana was in the living room folding clothes while Julian read the newspaper in an armchair. Alvaro played in the hallway with a small ball, hitting walls with carefree laughter. Lucia, in silence, waited in the kitchen, pretending to organize her notebooks. The doorbell's sound made Mariana frown. She wasn't expecting visits at that hour. It was Lucia who ran to open, and there stood Ernesto with the white box in his hands. He crouched a bit to be at her height, and told her in low voice, "Today you'll blow out candles as it should be." She smiled nervously and let him in. They walked together to the kitchen, where he placed the box on the table. With slow and solemn gesture, he opened the lid and revealed the cake. Lucia covered her mouth with both hands, incapable of believing what she saw. A real cake with a red candle in the center, waiting for her. Her eyes filled with tears of joy. She approached slowly, as if fearing it was a dream that would vanish at any moment. Ernesto took a box of matches and lit the candle. The small flame illuminated the kitchen, reflecting in the girl's eyes. "It's yours, Lucia," he said with soft voice. "Your birthday deserves this and much more." Lucia breathed deeply and was about to blow when a sound of firm steps interrupted the scene. Mariana appeared in the doorway with crossed arms and hard expression on her face. Her gaze fixed on the cake, the lit candle, her daughter's smile, and finally on Ernesto, who remained standing beside the table. "What's happening here?" she asked with cold tone. Silence fell over the kitchen. The candle's flame flickered as if it too had felt the question's weight. Lucia stepped back, frightened everything would crumble. Ernesto held Mariana's gaze without looking away, while inside he prepared to say what for years he had kept silent, that there's nothing more unjust than forgetting a child's heart. The atmosphere tensed as if each object in the room held its breath. Julian from the living room heard his wife's voice and stood with curiosity, approaching the threshold. Alvaro stopped bouncing the ball and looked toward the kitchen, intrigued. In that instant, the entire house turned to that scene. A simple cake with red candle, a girl about to receive what she had always dreamed, and a mother who still didn't know she was facing the most important lesson of her life. The candle kept burning in silence, and on Mariana's face mixed surprise, discomfort, and something deeper she didn't yet want to recognize. Mariana remained motionless in the doorframe. The red candle's flame flickered over the cake, and on her face reflected something more than surprise. It was the discomfort of someone recognizing a painful truth. For a few seconds, nobody spoke. Lucia lowered her gaze, afraid her mother would blow out the candle with a severe breath. Don Ernesto, on the other hand, remained serene with relaxed arms, like someone who knows truth needs no adornments. "Was this necessary, Ernesto?" Mariana asked with a cold tone, trying to hide her voice's tremor. The entire kitchen seemed to listen. Julian peeked from the living room with newspaper still in hand, confused. "More necessary than you imagine," Ernesto responded without raising his voice. "She deserves a candle as much as her brother." Lucia raised her eyes to her mother, hoping to find anger, but what she saw was bewilderment. Mariana didn't know what to say. For years she had followed the routine of attending to Alvaro with care, convinced the firstborn needed all attention to have a future. And yet, there was her daughter, with happiness hanging from a small lit candle others had given her. Julian entered the kitchen and looked at the scene in silence. He saw Lucia with joined hands, trembling, and remembered recent years when he had always said later, when she asked for something. He lowered the newspaper as if suddenly it weighed too much and murmured, "He's right. We've been unfair." The words remained floating in the air, stronger than any reproach. Mariana breathed deeply. For the first time she dared look at her daughter without excuses. The candle kept burning and seemed to accuse her in silence. The hardness of her face began crumbling little by little until tears began to flow. She walked toward Lucia, knelt before her and took her small hands. "Forgive your mother, daughter," she whispered with broken voice. "I've been blind, busy with everything except you. I thought you didn't need so much, and I was wrong." Lucia, surprised, blinked with eyes full of water. She didn't know how to react, but her mother's hand's warm contact made her feel that apology was real. She pressed her lips and let a tear slide down her cheek, this time not of sadness, but of relief. Don Ernesto looked away, moved. He didn't want to interrupt that intimate moment, but in his heart burned the memory of his own forgotten childhood. He had waited decades to see an adult say what was never said to him. At that instant, an unexpected sound interrupted the emotion. Alvaro, who had been listening from the hallway, entered slowly. He carried the ball in his hands and left it on the floor with a soft thud. His eyes moved from the cake to his mother and then to his sister. He swallowed and said in low voice, almost timid, "I want to sing with you too, Lucia." The girl looked at him with astonishment. Her brother, who had always been the center of everything, now approached with sincerity she didn't expect. Mariana observed him with pride and sadness at the same time, understanding even Alvaro had learned something in silence. The red candle flickered as if waiting for everyone to find the right words. Silence became an invisible bridge between them. And for the first time, the entire family was gathered not around the eldest son, nor appearances, but around the house's forgotten heart, Lucia. That night, the entire family gathered around the dining room table. Outside, Boston continued celebrating spring with guitars and drums in the town square, but inside that house reigned a different silence, charged with emotion for the first time in a long while. There were no hurries, no work conversations, no phones turned on. Everyone was there for one reason, Lucia. The small strawberry and cream cake rested in the table's center. The red candle shone with steady flame, projecting warm flashes on those presents' faces. Lucia contemplated it with very open eyes, as if fearing it would disappear at any moment. Mariana, at her side, gently caressed her shoulder. Julian, with serious but moved expression, held his wife's hand. Alvaro, seated opposite, seemed more nervous than ever, fidgeting with his fingers and looking at his sister with shyness. Don Ernesto observed in silence, leaning back in his chair, satisfied to have fulfilled his promise. When the candle was lit, everyone began to sing Happy Birthday with warm and emotional voices. It wasn't the boisterous chorus of Alvaro's friends or superficial laughter from a party full of gifts. It was a simple, heartfelt song that resonated like a caress. Lucia, with overflowing heart, closed her eyes and made a wish. Nobody knew what it was, but everyone felt in that moment something profound changed in the house. She blew softly and the flame extinguished in a thread of smoke that rose slowly. Everyone applauded, even Alvaro, who leaned forward and with timid smile told her, "Happy birthday, sister." Lucia looked at him surprised. It was the first time she heard those words from his mouth. He, embarrassed, handed her a piece of cake and added, "This time the first piece is for you." Tears returned to Mariana's eyes. Julian, unable to contain himself, raised his glass and murmured, "May there never again be a missing candle in this house." Ernesto nodded in silence, as if those words were also for him, for his inner child who was once forgotten. After the cake, the kitchen filled with a different atmosphere. Mariana approached her daughter, hugged her tightly, and told her in her ear, "I promise you'll never be invisible again." Julian kissed Lucia's forehead, and Alvaro, awkwardly, joined the family embrace. For the first time, the girl felt she didn't need to hide her wishes in a notebook or invent crayon cakes. Now she knew she was an essential part of the family. Don Ernesto got up slowly and went out to the balcony. Night was fresh and fair lights illuminated the street. He heard the echo of a guitar and neighbors' distant laughter. He looked toward the dark sky, then at the extinguished candle still smoking on the table behind him, and murmured with serenity, "One candle is enough if it's lit with love." In that instant, he understood he hadn't just made a gesture for a girl. He had lit a new fire in an entire family. And while the candle's smoke vanished in the air, the house finally breathed in harmony, as if that small flame had returned to everyone the warmth they had lost without realizing. In a Boston house, a simple cake with a single candle was enough to transform silence into joy and to reconcile a family's hearts. It wasn't balloons or gifts that made the difference, but a quiet gesture that reminded everyone of what's essential. No child should grow up feeling invisible. And now, dear listeners, if this story has moved you, I invite you to leave a 1 in the comments. If on the other hand you believe it can still improve, mark with a 0 and share your thoughts. The scene of Lucia blowing out a candle on a piece of bread is an image that remains in memory because it reminds us how fragile a child's dreams are. Her parents' forgetfulness wasn't intentional, but it was hurtful. And only the intervention of someone who knew how to look beyond appearances managed to return her dignity. That moment teaches us life is composed of simple gestures, and that a spark of tenderness can awaken what seemed lost. The teaching is clear. Unconditional love has the strength to repair mistakes and illuminate the soul's darkest corners. We all deserve to be loved and recognized, not for merits or hierarchies, but simply for existing. True wealth isn't in money or status, but in the capacity to look at the other and give them a place in our heart. Like a discreet lamp shining by the window, an act of kindness can illuminate paths and remind us happiness is built by sharing it. I invite you to reflect. To whom in your surroundings could you offer a candle today? Even if symbolic, perhaps a grandchild waiting for a hug, a neighbor living in silence, a friend who doesn't receive calls. Lighting that light costs nothing, but its glow can last a lifetime. And remember, as Lucia showed us with her timid smile, 1 candle is enough.